Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Daily Ipswich. It is crossover Friday as we are looking ahead to Town's home tie against Tottenham this Saturday at Portman Road. And to do that, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Mr. Joe Forrester from the Daily Tottenham podcast. How are you doing, Joe?
Yeah, good mate, good. How are you?
Yeah, really, really good. I was saying to you before we logged on, this is one of the few games we can sort of look back fondly in terms of our previous meeting this season. It's been few and far between, so I'm sure you guys are hoping to give us a rebuttal and get a good scoreline for you guys. But yeah, looking forward to this weekend.
Do you know what? It's one of those weird football matches that's sort of just like, it feels like a little bit of a derby or a grudge match now because kind of Ipswich, the defeat to Ipswich at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium was kind of emblematic of Spurs' patchy season because you mentioned before off air that we then subsequently went and beat Man City, thrashed Man City 4-0, I think 4 or 5 days later. But that was generally the start of Spurs' rotten run of form, horrible injury crisis, all that sort of thing. So there is a part of me, that illogical football fan, that goes, well, it was Ipswich's fault.
We are, I think, well, to be honest, I think if you look at rivals for us in the Premier League this season, geographically, you guys are maybe one of the closest teams to us as well. That could maybe be a bit more of a thing as well, because really in our part of the country, with the exception of a certain team in Norfolk, we haven't really got any rivals, to be honest. So it's kind of nice to have that sense of a rivalry going into a game for sure. Well, I think with today's show, we'll start with focusing on you guys of being the away team. So really first, Joe, I mean, obviously, I think from an outside perspective, it may not have been the season you guys were hoping for, but how would you just rate you Spurs' season overall so far with a few months left of the season to go?
I would say, if we go on the old podcast star rating system, I would say it's a 2-star season. It's been very disappointing for Spurs. Like, obviously, kind of last year was a kind of a season of two halves, in the sense that Tottenham were absolutely electric for the first 10 games of the season, got beaten by Chelsea at home, and kind of this giant collapse happened, but had thankfully accrued enough points to see us through into the European places with that run in that first 10 games. But one of the things that I think, because the points total was perhaps a bit misleading at the end of last season, was that Spurs have been in rotten form pretty much since the start of last year, and that's really continued into this season. There's without a doubt been an injury crisis. That being said, kind of like, I don't want to rely on that too much, because I kind of look at Bournemouth, who I know for large periods of the last few weeks have had 9 first 11 players that would theoretically be in the first 11 out, and have been absolutely electric. So yes, Spurs have had injuries, but I guess what Postecoglou will hide behind is, I've got a system that fits these 11 players, and they're the ones who know how to play it. But conversely, I think Tottenham fans would kind of be like, well, you're managing a squad, not a team, so everybody should know how to play that system. And I get kind of playing a load of teenagers and stuff isn't ideal. I don't think the injuries are enough of an excuse for how poor Tottenham's form's been. We don't mind losing games if you've got a few first teamers out. What we do mind is playing poorly and incoherently. And I think that is a little bit of a worry, in that kind of classic football cliche, has he lost the dressing room? Floats around a lot. Also, Ange kind of very bullishly said, oh, I always win a trophy in my second season. And Spurs were subsequently knocked out of the League Cup and the FA Cup in 5 days of one another, leaving only the Europa League. The reason it's a 2-star season, not a 1-star, is because Spurs are in the Europa League knockout stages. So we're pinning all our hopes on that. In the league, 8th would be delightful, but that seems out of reach. And if I'd have known I'd be saying that this time last year, I think I'd have been very disappointed.
Yeah, very much so. I think, like, touching on the injuries there, because obviously it is I think that one of the many narratives surrounding the club at the moment. But I mean, yes, like you said, it's an excuse you can only use for a certain amount of time. But there are a lot of players out, and we did see last week we have a few coming back, the likes of Kieran and a few others as well coming back into the team, and you did get 3 points, albeit against quite a poor United side. So I think there is an aspect to show, like, once certain players do come back in, you very much can compete on certain levels. I mean, we very much have had quite a few injuries this season as well. I mean, thankfully Liam Delap hasn't gone out, but I'm fairly certain if he was to go out, the goals would, not that they've been going in on a constant rate this season, but obviously he's been our main goal threat this season. If he was to go away, I'm pretty sure he'd use that as an excuse to the cows come home. But obviously, like you said, some players have been out, and yes, maybe in the league it's not where you guys would like to be, of course, but we've seen some certain, like, young players come into the squad. I think Jed Spence finally seems to be getting his chance, and young blonde lad. Is it Bergvall?
Bergvall, yeah.
Bergvall, yeah. I think those two have really impressed me from an outsider's perspective as well. Are there any players this season maybe who, going into this year, you've always got the usual suspects of Son and maybe Madison, obviously he's fallen slightly out of favour, but are there any players this season so far, again, like I said, it's not what you would have wanted, I'm sure, but who sort of have kind of impressed you when you didn't expect to see that sort of form coming?
Yeah, well, you were absolutely right to single out the youngsters. Lucas Bergvall has been excellent. So Bergvall he was 18 at the start of the season. He's only just turned 19. For people who haven't watched a lot of Tottenham, he's a kind of all-action midfielder, kind of favours playing in the final third, but is not scared to kind of get back and mix it up a little bit. He's been excellent, really kind of gone from strength to strength. And certainly in the last few weeks, I've looked at him and gone, he's our best midfielder. Because another issue that Spurs have had as first-team players have come back, and included amongst those are Bentancur and Basuma. So the midfield three is generally for the past few weeks been Bentancur, Basuma and Sarr. And in all honesty, they have been shambolic, giving the ball away, kind of no ability to kind of hassle the opposition in midfield. And that's been where Tottenham's really struggled. And actually, Lucas Bergvall, when he's played or when he started, has been excellent. The other youngster to single out is Archie Gray. Came from Leeds last year where he played central midfield, but also obviously played right back a fair bit. Was coming to Spurs, pretty much played centre back for the entire season as Tottenham's 3 first choice centre backs were all out. So it's been him and Ben Davis for a lot. Spurs have had tons and tons of different combinations as well, it's worth saying, in defence. But Gray's been absolutely fantastic, composed, strong, great feet. I personally can't wait to see him playing defensive midfield, which is apparently his favoured position. He's only 18. He looks like a real player, so delighted with him. Jed Spence as well, the Jed Renaissance. That's been absolutely amazing to see. His talent wasn't in doubt when he came. He was in the Championship Team of the Year playing for Borough, I think, on loan from Forrest, or possibly the other way around. Came to Spurs. Antonio Conte said he's not good enough. I'm sure that can't be great for a young player's confidence. Went on loan to Leeds, where he had a knee injury, then went to Genoa in Italy and actually got a bit of first team football there. Played at San Siro a couple of times, come back a much more mature player. And he's the best fullback at the club at the moment. So while he's a right footer currently playing left back, while we wait for Destiny Udogie to come back at left back, I mean, I don't know if Udogie will get back in the team. Spencer's had back-to-back Man of the Match awards and looked worth it. And kind of as an England fan, I kind of say, oh, is that the England left-back problem solved? Just stick Spence in. The other kind of standout player this season has probably been Dejan Kulusevski. His talent was never in doubt. I watched a bit of pre-season and I kind of thought he just looks so fit, so quick, so strong. His technique has kind of never been in question. He has dropped off a bit the last few weeks, but he's probably quite tired from carrying the team on his shoulders. James Madison has been, again, patchy. He was actually excellent against Manchester United, scored the goal that won the game, gave it the old darts celebration and the shush to the lips, obviously, reference to kind of Roy Keane's comments the week before. When he plays and he's purring, we're a completely different team because he really can just run a game. And you said Vicario as well. Having Vicario back was night and day. I mean, United had 3 or 4 really decent chances despite being awful. And Vicario was just absolutely imperious. And we've really, really missed him. So probably more than any other player, I think Tottenham fans will be chuffed to know he's back and he's fit.
Mm. Yeah. Speaking of Madison there, before we go to first break here, is it been a matter of fact of him being out of favour or maybe injuries kind of played a bit? Because when you guys played us earlier in the season, he only played like the last 5 minutes to try and get an equaliser. It wasn't really what you would expect from him to be like contributing to the game, and I think him would be thinking that as well. I mean, I said in our preview pod on yesterday's show to Richard from our team, saying how for me he's one of your standout players. You think like when he is on form, he's one of the most creative players I think in the Premier League, and you saw he was on the fringes of that England team last summer as well. You know, it's hard to get into that area of the field because there's so many great players, isn't there? But for you, should he be nailed on starter, or is there a good reason why Ange just left him out on quite a few occasions this season?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, because this time last year, he was in the England squad, or certainly kind of getting into England squads for friendlies and stuff. And now he's missed 2 England squads in a row. And I know he's been injured, but some of that is through form. He's a really mercurial footballer. And now that he's in his late 20s, I think he's 27, 28, he should be more consistent because his talent is kind of not up for debate. He's a lovely kind of classy midfielder, like I say, can run a game. We thought we'd kind of maybe found his position when he played a little bit deeper at the start of the season. Form dropped off again. Dejan Kulusevski was actually in attacking midfield when kind of everybody was fit. I personally, if it's a game of Football Manager, I'm playing James Madison every week because he is, talent-wise, undoubtedly, he can make a difference. I think Spurs fans would just like to see him have that impact on the game every week. And I think the expectations are higher for him because he's such a good player. That being said, I think, to be honest with you, I think he's also been asked to play in a couple of different positions throughout the midfield, and kind of on top of that, teammates coming in and out. It's not kind of a consistent playing field for him. But yeah, in an ideal world, just from my point of view, my dream midfield would probably be Madison, Bergvall and Gray right now, because I don't think Basuma Sarr and Bentancur are anywhere near the level they should be at.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you there as well with your early point for Archie Gray as well. I think it's shown for him as well this season the fact that he's had to play in a position that he wasn't brought in to play, and he's actually been relatively competent and one of the few standout players. Shows as a quality player, and when he does go in, as you said, in his correct position, he should flourish even more. Before we go to the first break, I'm sure you get asked it a lot, but where are you on Ange? For me, I like the guy. I mean, obviously, I think personality wise, that's not come into question. I think he's kind of charmed the league. Obviously, very much so did last season. It's been a bit flakier this year with his, as you said, his second season cup statement at the start of the year. Kind of did put him into the deep end a little bit. But from where I look at things, it's if he does go, who else is there? I'm not going to pretend I was I knew of him that much really last season. Obviously, I heard him the season before. I knew of him at Celtic, but it's not many big name managers out there. But I not necessarily think that's what Spurs fans want. Where do you stand on Ange? It's quite divisive, isn't it? In or out, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he's been humbled a little bit this season because he kind of had we play one way. This is the only way we play. It's amazing, fine, that's great if you kind of have a world 11 and you look at the other great managers. I don't know, all the people who are doing really well at the moment, Arne Slot, for example, he'll adapt the way his team plays because you have to. Because I think the big thing that Ange has found out is if you're in Scotland, then there are two good teams. And apologies to kind of Scottish listeners and fans of SPL clubs who aren't Rangers or Celtic, but there are teams in that division who are closer to League One level than there are kind of Premier League level. So you can go out and be swashbuckling and incredibly attacking and aggressive every game. You can't do that in the Premier League because there's 15 good teams who would give you a really good game, maybe more. I mean, who in the league at the moment is an absolute gimme? Southampton, maybe? Leicester? But that's pretty much it. But no, obviously you came to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, you beat us. It's an incredibly competitive division with a very high level of ability. So he has, in recent weeks, been forced to adapt. And there's kind of an issue of he perhaps has gone too far the other way and is now trying to kind of lump the ball forward. I just wonder how nuanced he is as a manager and if this is slightly beyond his level, but I don't want to be unfair. I think kind of give him a fit squad and see where we are at the end of the season. But if we're still having some flat, lackluster performances, and let's be honest, we beat Manchester United on Sunday because they were worse than us. That's it. It wasn't Spurs were brilliant. Spurs were rubbish. So that's beating United these days isn't anything particularly to shout about. Yeah, I think it's probably split very 50-50, the fan base, in terms of Ange. I'm willing to give him a few more months. But if it's still a bit flat, I would personally like to see the club move heaven and earth to get Andoni Iraola to move slightly further north and come to Spurs.
Yeah, that he very much does seem like the next name on the changing sheet, doesn't he, for managers, because he's done such a fantastic job at Bournemouth, and there's definitely bigger fish to fry for him as a manager for sure. We're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to discuss a bit more things to do with Ipswich Town.
Your body is unique, and Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements, designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
Can I just say, if you listen to that Saturday Feeling podcast on the Global Sports Podcast Network, or kind of a couple of other ones, you might recognise those dulcet tones as Ken, who's actually one of the chaps who runs the network. And I love that advert because I don't know why he's done it so sexy and alluring, but it's just I want some Bioniq now. Like, just well done, Ken.
like the British Barry White or something, isn't it?
Oh, it's so honestly, it's ridiculous. It's like ASMR.
Yeah, great to hear Ken's voice this Friday for sure. Just like I said before the break there, we're going to look ahead, look at Ipswich Town now as well. Joe, before I'll sort of give you my sort of take on how we fared as a club this season, just obviously, yeah, like you said, we came to your place earlier this season, got our first win of the season. It was really, really fantastic for us because I think if that didn't go well, who knows where a victory could have came from. It was really starting to get a bit desperate, but since then, we've only managed to get 2 more wins since then. We are still 18th, but albeit 2 points off Wolves. So I think between us and them really this season as to who will potentially join Leicester and Southampton going down to the Championship. But just thoughts on Ipswich as general as a club and just how we fared this season, really.
Yeah, been very impressed, to be honest. Obviously kind of something of I think it's fair to say, an unexpected promotion, which obviously you do get. That's kind of the magic of the Championship. Like, kind of your fortunes can change very quickly. And actually think, to be honest, that Ipswich have acquitted themselves really well in the Premier League, play some decent football, given some people decent games. Like you say, it's a tough injury list at the moment. I mean, Twanzebe's suspended, isn't he? You've got a couple of other injuries as well. And I think, for a team that was kind of constructed for Championship or maybe even League One with a few kind of players signed for the Premier League, I think that's something you kind of really can't afford to lose. Obviously, Liam Delap is the kind of only outlet when it comes to goals, really. And as you say, thankfully, he stayed fit. But yeah, really impressed, to be honest, and still kind of in touch with 17th. As you say, I think it's only 2 points between yourselves and Wolves. West Ham in 16th. I think 8 points further on and probably a little bit out of reach now. But it is going to be, well, I mean, Southampton are gone, aren't they? And Leicester likely as well. But it is that battle, looks like, between yourselves and Wolves to stay in the division. And right now, I couldn't call it.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I think it's a game-by-game basis. Like, after the Southampton game, I was luckily away on holiday, so I missed that game. But I think after that, I did kind of feel like the writing was on the wall, because if you can't beat them, what hope have you got? But it's a game-by-game basis, isn't it? And we had a fantastic, I think, the FA Cup win against Coventry. Really kind of, yes, it was a team in the league below, but very much was a shot of confidence in the arm. And then a really, really good point away at Villa. We got 2 points again against them this season, which come the end of the season could be vital because they're a really, really good squad. So confidence is slightly creeping back, and it's a funny business, isn't it, football, where you can go 2 or 3 games. Obviously, after I think we drew against Fulham in January, went on a really poor run, albeit against Liverpool and City, conceded like 10 goals in 2 games, only scoring 1. But then, you jump ahead a few weeks and you get a great draw against arguably one of the most informed sides in Europe, in Aston Villa, and getting a really, really good point. So I am a bit more optimistic heading to this weekend. I think for me this season, the League One sort of Championship squad we've had for the past couple of years has started to fade away. We've had to obviously we have brought in a lot of players this season. I think we may have signed the most players this season as a whole. To be honest, we brought a lot more in January as well, and we had this kind of sort of romantic sort of connection to the squad, really, because it was such a meteoric rise the past 2 years. But a lot of those guys now have slowly been faded out, and it's been kind of difficult as fans to see that at the start, because you do, like I said, you do kind of want to see those guys who came up be the reason you're staying up. I'd say really the only player for me, only play 1 or 2 players now who are almost still nailed on in the first 11, despite the fact they were in that League One team, were our captain Sam Morsey and Leif Davis. They're really the only 2 who I could say would firmly start each game, despite the fact we're now in the Premier League. A lot of them have unfortunately flagged. Luke Wolfenden, one of our own centre-back, he still does make the odd cameo. He came on for Twanzebe after the red card last week and did put in a good performance. But yeah, it's having to adjust. I think it's been really difficult this season. The adjustment's the biggest part. Obviously, you've gone up a league. That's a big factor. But it's bringing in all these squads and players, and having to buy into the culture of what we're doing as a club. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've been able to bring in some quote-unquote big names. I think, yes, opinion can be divided on, but Calvin Phillips coming to us, I think, was quite a big move, and Ciso coming in January as well. I think that's 2 players really, who could be clubs higher in the league, but they obviously bought into what McKenna's been feeding them. So I'm a bit more optimistic about staying up just because Wolves, just the lack of passion I see in comparison from them to our fan base, I think it is a bit more night and day. And we have played some good football as well. There's been a lot of results this season that really, it's been the skin of our teeth. Like we conceded late against Leicester, and then we were 3-0 at Brentford, and then scored a last minute goal to lose the game there. There's been a lot more games like that as well. So, because I think in terms of drawing this season, we are quite close to you. I think in the amount of games we've drawn 8. And, well, just you've drawn 3 this season, but it's the losses that kind of have come your way. But we've drawn a lot of games this season as well. And, you can sometimes look back and think, it's hard not to look back and think, if that went our way, we wouldn't be here. But we are. But I'm still very much enjoying the ride. I don't think, there were quite a lot of boos after the Southampton loss recently, which were, considering where Southampton have been this season, that could slightly be justified. But you got to look at, most likely this day 2 years ago, we were away at Fleetwood or Crawley or something. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And now to be at home in the Premier League against you guys this weekend, it's a pinch yourself moment still, and I'm really enjoying it. And just hope the season can have a happy ending. Even if it doesn't, it's been a great season, and we're very much in good stead for next year for sure. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
You mentioned Leif Davis, and I think he's due back this weekend.
Yeah, hopefully.
And I'm interested, like you said about Calvin Phillips as well, and kind of buying into Kieran McKenna's project. I think Kieran McKenna is one of those managers who's quite admired elsewhere in the Premier League, because still kind of tried to do things, well, quote unquote, kind of the right way, and kind of play a decent brand of football where possible. Where are the fan base on him? Like, is this kind of roughly where you thought he'd have you this time?
On McKenna or Davis?
Oh, McKenna, sorry.
I think, there's a reason he's the only manager in the bottom 5 or 6 clubs to not be let go this season. My colleague Rob from our podcast, he's likened it to Davis from Luton last season, where however they performed, he wasn't going to get the sack, and I thought they were the best side out of the 3 sides that went down last year as well. So I think that he's always got that sort of surety as well, and the style of football we play. Like you talked about how Ange was maybe slightly stubborn in terms of changing his style. We've changed our style on a few occasions this year. Not that it's worked every single time, but he's been open to doing that. We've played a 4-2-3-1 the past 2.5 years of him at the helm, and it worked a treat in League One and the Championship, of course. But this season we've tried to play that same way, and then I think we got battered by Newcastle just before Christmas, and then a few other games after that, and then we changed to a 5, which worked briefly. We had a 5 against Chelsea, and I think we had it against you as well. And so it kind of sacrifices going forward for that defence. That hasn't really worked out because again, we had a 5 and got battered by Liverpool and City as well. So it's a game-by-game basis, but he's ready to play the way that's suited to our opponents, I feel, rather than just playing the same way every way. And he's a top manager as well. I think if we do go down, I would be very surprised if he is not still a Premier League manager next year. Maybe even of you guys, he's got a Spurs.
Yeah.
I hope that's not the case, to be honest. I hope he's still at Portman Road, but he's got such a bright future ahead of him for all the right reasons. He's done such a fantastic job, like I said, bringing in names who you wouldn't expect to maybe come to Ipswich, considering certain other clubs might have a bit more pull, but he's able to bring him in. And I think that just shows how good of a manager he is. And there's so many players really that were either on the tail end of their career or just kind of slightly stagnating, and he's improved them so much. I think, Liam Delap last year is a prime example of, this is still his first season in the Premier League and kind of being the main guy. He was at Hull on loan last season, but really didn't set the world alight in the Championship. Was a decent player, but no one was I don't think the season ended last year saying he's definitely going to be a Premier League player next season. It's nailed on. It's like a Philogene kind of was expected, both in the same side as Hull, both now on the same team actually as well. But I think I've been so stunned by Liam Delap this season. Obviously, it's his own individual quality is a reason why he's been so great. But McKenna's surely got to be another factor as to why he's been so good this season. And there's many other players you could attribute that to as well. Like they said, Leif Davis is another one as well, who's definitely improved under McKenna.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, I do genuinely think, as you say, Kieran McKenna's done a great job. And as you say, looking at Wolves at the moment and kind of the atmosphere around there, and I think Molineux is naturally a very home of negativity a lot of the time. But it's a real toss-up, I think, between Ipswich and Wolves. I mean, I guess as well, I'm just kind of thinking now, in terms of this weekend, I still feel a little bit stung by what happened back in November. I think it was December, so I do approach the game with a little bit of trepidation. Yeah,
I mean, I think that's why we're, like I said to you before we start recording today, it's one of the few games we're actually approaching it a bit more confidently, just because we haven't beaten many teams this season. So yes, obviously you guys aren't where you should be in the league. Like you are, I think by many still considered a top 6 side, but we got a victory over you, so there's reason to be confident. So I do hope that can be the case going into this weekend. I tell you, we'll take our final break here, Joe, and then we'll come back. We'll sort of preview the game a bit more, score predictions, lineups, all that sort of stuff.
Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform, and Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform.
Rob trying to get his word in twice there. It doesn't happen.
There you go. The advert's so good, we did it twice.
So yeah, like I said, we're going to be doing a bit more of a deep dive into Saturday's game now. Joe, I'll ask you, like, what must Spurs do different this time, putting it that simple? Like, what was the reason you guys lost and what needs to change?
In all honesty, complacency. There's definitely an element of that. Tottenham have been able to get themselves up for playing Man City. Well, I was going to say for the big clubs, and then my brain just went just City. But kind of Spurs do kind of have it in their locker, but also there is definitely an element of motivation. I think given what happened last time and kind of the scar it's left on the fan base and I guess on the players and kind of what it represented in terms of the start of such a rotten run of form and how you completely outplayed us at home. I don't think that complacency will be there. I also think there's so many players coming back from injury as well that Spurs will be really bolstered. So as we mentioned earlier, it'll be Madison, Vicario, both back, but also Brennan Johnson fit again, Wilson Odebear fit again for the first time in 6 months or whatever, and looked a really good player at the start of the season. So I think Spurs will be going into it with confidence, but not complacency.
Yeah, I think it's like they know, but you guys know us a bit more now, and there can be that sort of just I can't try to think the right adjective, but yeah, being a bit less fearful of your opponent, I guess, because when you played us last time, yeah, we weren't much of a name, and I think obviously yes, we're not where you guys are as a club right now, but I think even us this season, like our best performances have been against your Spurs, your Chelsea, the 2 points against Aston Villa, home against Man United, and then we've really struggled against sides we could conceivably get a result against. Like we had a really poor loss at home to Everton, obviously lost to Southampton, gave it away against Leicester at the end. There's been games where we thought we could have got something more and we haven't. So I think our team, yeah, again, they'll be confident as it's one of the few teams we've actually beaten this season. But I'd like to think, considering the size of the opposition, they'll be even more up for it as well. And the home ground has not been good this year to us, so hopefully that can turn around as well.
Well, this is it, and I kind of meant no disrespect to Ipswich. I think Spurs and the mentality of kind of that Tottenham have as a fan base, realistic or not, but you kind of got to set your goals high. Is at home, we don't really think it's acceptable to drop points to anyone apart from maybe Liverpool. So that's it. So kind of home, and actually, you mentioned your home form has been poor. So Spurs. So actually, our away, like we're a much better side away from home. So hopefully that'll count this weekend.
Yeah. So to be honest, on the road as well, we've flourished a bit more this season as well. How do you see Spurs lining up? As you said, you've got a lot more players coming back now. I mean, I'm not sure if he's back. I don't think you mentioned him, but I'm a big fan of Van de Ven. Is that a chance of him rearing his head anytime soon, or is jury still out?
No. So his injury is slightly more problematic because it's repeated hamstring strains, which are caused by sprinting. Now, obviously, he's the fastest player in the Premier League. That stat came out last year. And in all honesty, a lot of Ange's original system was predicated on play as high up the pitch as you like because Mickey's quicker than anyone. That was the game plan. And that's brilliant. But if the guy's got to do all the sprinting, particularly it's happened twice now, we're waiting around after VAR checks, muscle gets cold, sprints, hamstring goes, brilliant. He's gone for 2 months. He won't be fit this weekend, neither will Christian Romero. The defence will likely be Vicario in goal. Your fullbacks will be Pedro Porro at right back, I'd imagine, and Jed Spence at left back. Centre-back partnership probably of Kevin Danzo, a new guy's come in on loan with an option to buy, who's actually looked really good so far. Kind of everything Ange wants from a defender. Technically very good, can pass the ball, absolutely rapid, like perfect, reads the game well. And probably Archie Gray at centre-half. He was actually rested against Manchester United. I think the midfield three, in all likelihood, Ange loves Bentancur. So it'll probably be Bentancur, Madison, and Bogle. and kind of Bergvall in there, Madison and Bergvall kind of interchanging positions. And you'd imagine front three of Kulusevski, Son, and Matthias Tell, who we've got on loan, again, with an option to buy from Bayern. Now, I think a lot of Spurs fans wouldn't be too gutted if we saw Son dropped and Kulusevski switched that side, and then Johnson or Odebear start. But Ange has backed himself into a corner because Son is the club captain. So he's pretty much undroppable, but his form has been way, way beneath his levels. But yeah, a strong team with good players on the bench as well.
I was going to ask you about that earlier in the show, actually, regarding Son, because, I think for him, he's relied on his pace a lot. He's 31, 32 now, maybe older than that, I believe. I think you kind of gave it away slightly there in terms of where your head is at regarding him. Is his days as a starter numbered now, do you believe then? It's maybe harsh to say because he's been such a quality player, as he really took up the mantle after Kane left, fantastically as well, didn't he? But maybe I guess his legs are starting to fall a bit short, or a pace too short now, aren't they?
Yeah, he's one of the great players to play for Tottenham. Scored some incredible goals. The goals where he skinned about 5 players from the touchline running into the box against Chelsea. The goal against Burnley, where I was actually at the game, which won the Puskas Award, where he just skinned the entire team. Proper Roy of the Rovers kind of FIFA stuff. I mean, he's an iconic player. I think he really benefited, actually, weirdly, he was one of the players who massively benefited under Mourinho and Conte, because we were counter-attacking teams. And if you can set him free, few better finishes in the league. He also massively benefited from having Harry Kane, because Kane is not only an incredible strike partner, but also has ridiculous passing range and vision. So would find him a lot. I mean, there's loads of stats about how those two are combined for far more goals than anybody else in the Premier League. Now we're a team that often plays on the front foot in and around the opposition half, and I think he just struggles to make his presence felt. He tries to kind of find a yard and curl one in. Yeah, I think he's lost his way in terms of what he is as a player, but also you're right. I kind of think maybe some of those attributes like pace have started to go. He's also a real confidence player, I think, because he's a very nice guy. So he doesn't have that kind of cyborg Harry Kane mentality of nothing will stop me, win at all costs. Not that Harry Kane's not a nice guy, but he's just pretty bulletproof when it comes to temperament. I think he'll see out the season, certainly, starting for Spurs. I would be, if he's playing this way in May, I would be very surprised to see him starting games for us again in August, kind of given that we have Solanke, Kulusevski, Johnson, Odebear, and Tell. I'm not going to mention Richarlison because just not worth it. But have all of those players to pick from up front, I find it hard to believe that he would be in the team at that point.
Yeah, it's very much the case of you look at sort of, it's always a way with managers, and it sort of bringing the players that sort of fit their style. And obviously with him being at the club before the case, not that, I'm sure Postecoglou didn't come to the club thinking well, he's not one of my guys, get rid of him, because he's obviously the captain and been one of the most important players for the club for over a decade now. But you're starting to see the likes of, like you said, Tell and a few of the other younger lads as well really start to put a stamp on things, which, I'm sure Postecoglou will want to claim as his own as well. So that could be a factor.
Spurs are also in a very weird position there. Is we have a Yang Min Hok, who's a very exciting young Korean winger / forward, who's out on loan at the moment, who weirdly might be, so we might actually have a South Korean international starting up front for us next season, but it just might not be Son, which is kind of quite nice and cyclical.
Yeah, well, he's on loan at QPR at
That's
the moment.
Right. He's at QPR, yeah.
Yeah, 1 assist in 4 games, which, isn't too bad.
Well, he essentially was deemed not physical enough, so got sent off to the Championship to basically freeze at Loftus Road and get roughed up a bit.
Well, we kind of had that with, I think that was the aim from Chelsea with bringing Hutchinson to us last year, was he never really had sort of first team football in the Premier League, just the odd EFL Cup appearance and stuff. And we kind of saw that of him last year, where the first half of the season was quite poor and physically was difficult to match with some of the, because obviously Championship's a tough league.
Yeah.
But then he really, really found his feet in the latter stage of the season, physically and mentally, and scored very, very important goals for us. I think for us, in terms of lineups and stuff, I don't know how much you've kept abreast of the goalkeeping fiasco we've had this season. I think it's a case of a lot of clubs in the bottom of the division. it's always quite easy to point the finger at the goalkeeper, but I think for us this season, it's been warranted because Muric, we bought him from Burnley. I was questioning that move at the start of the season, and I was questioning it for weeks and weeks. And there's a lot of errors we've made this season. He's made this season, and it's cost us points at the end of the day. And we brought in Christian Walton, who was our goalkeeper in League One and was on the bench in the Championship. He came back, was really good against Chelsea actually, and made a few good games. But then an injury came, and we had to put Muric back in, and again errors immediately came back. So we've had to, and luckily it happened in January. So we brought in Alex Palmer from West Brom, who I think was having a really good season there, 11 clean sheets, albeit in the Championship. And he's played 2 games now, both away from home, and made a really, really big impact. Looks really confident against Coventry, and then last week, I don't know if you've seen the clips online, but some really, really great saves against Villa, and some Rashford and Watkins and Asensio just like peppering the net in the last stage of the game, and managed to hold his own. The only way he conceded was a rebound off Rashford's really, really good free kick, and then Watkins taking it well on the bounce to get the equaliser. And
even when you say that, that's impressive because that's 3 seriously good players as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I hope it's not the case of too little, too late with Palmer. Obviously, it's been 1 or 2 games. It may just be like a honeymoon period, and then it could come. We could just be sent back down to reality because we had a few games with Muric where he looked like he could be that guy, but then unfortunately didn't. But I expect to see our new keeper Alex Palmer in goal for us. I think in terms of how we're going to play it, because like I said, we did have that 5 at the back, but I think we're going to revert back to 4 now, with potentially it becoming a 5 when you're on the front foot. So I think we'll see a back 4. Obviously, Twanzebe's out injured. I think we may see a back 4 of Dara O'Shea and Greaves at centre-back. O'Shea's really impressed me. He was a bit poor at the start, but came to his own. If fit, Leif Davis. It's hard to predict with Town. I don't know how you guys are with injuries, but McKenna and the backroom never reveal anything. And then you find out on the day. We make our predictions on these Friday episodes. Come Saturday or Sunday, like Davis or someone's out, and you're like, didn't see that coming.
100%.
Yeah. If Leif Davis is fit, great. If not, Connor Townsend, who came in from last week, put in a really good performance. And then at right back, because Twanzebe's out, I would probably put Ben Johnson there. He played against you guys, albeit as a right wing back earlier in the season, but he put in a really good performance last week. He did play sort of the right wing back role, but I think considering what's going to be asked of him now, he should stick a bit more defensively. Midfield duo, I think I love Sam Morsey, but I think we need to keep Calvin Phillips and Kouyaté together. Phillips may hopefully be turning a corner. I'm not expecting him to have that Euro 2021 level of quality anymore. I'm just not. But there was a few moments last week when he was really, really aggressive, both offensively and defensively. So hopefully that's the case. Kouyaté as well. It's a good Swedish contingency in this game on both sides. You've got Kouyaté for us, then Kulusevski and Bergvall as well. So they've got some good players coming up, haven't they? And then I think our front 3, this is, again, it's quite difficult at the moment because we've got some decent players there, but injuries have kind of tied us a bit. I think we'd see Hutchinson in the middle, which I'm not a big fan of, but with Enciso out after his unfortunate injury last week, I think we'll see that again. A start from Philogene on the right. We haven't seen much of him. I think we expected it last week, but then with us going down to 10 men, there was no point bringing him on, really. And then after a really good brace and a decent cameo before he had to go off because of the red card, Jack Clark on the left, obviously a bit of a, I think, connection to Spurs as well. Then obviously Liam Delap up top as well. So we've got good attacking players there, but it's just whether they can actually do anything. But that would be my 11. And probably, like I said, I think we'd maybe go to a back 5 when you guys are on the front foot a bit more as well.
Nice. And that is something Tottenham struggle to break down. And just listening to that kind of with, if you're hitting us on the counter, that's the best way to play Tottenham because we play such a high line and we do struggle to break down teams that sit back as well. So, it's a tough one to call.
Yeah. Before we wrap up here, Joe, can I just get your most important thing, your predicted score, please?
I'm sorry, Ipswich fans. I am going to go for a 2-1 away win purely because so many returning players at this point. And I think Spurs will be very up for it after what happened tail end of last year. I think so many returning players. And I think maybe James Madison's still out there with a point to prove to Roy Keane, among others. So I think it's going to be a very decent incarnation of Spurs for the first time in a long time. Yeah, unfortunately for Town.
With James Madison as well, I touched on yesterday's show. He's obviously as well, he's got a bit of an allegiance to, I never said the name, but a certain club in North.
Yeah, of course.
And so he'll probably be caught up for it as well, and he'll probably get a welcoming boo whenever he's on the ball for his connection to that other team.
One of my best mates supports the team that play in yellow, and he'll be absolutely fuming that I've come on this podcast.
Well, they're not a Premier League side, are they? So they can't really.
So no one cares what they think.
Yeah, exactly. I think for us, I said on yesterday's one, and again, it's one of the few games really to be relatively confident, just considering what happened earlier in the season. I'm not going to go on the back foot. So I predicted 1-0 for us on Thursday. I'm going to go for it again. Just with Palmer's quality, I'd like to think that may see us through. I know you guys obviously carry a lot of attacking threat as well. And with, like you said, with those returns, you've kind of got me ahead a bit and it's been a bit more fearful than maybe what I was at the start. But I think 1-0 and just easy to say, but a Liam Delap winner, really, for me. It's the only way to go, isn't it, these days?
There you go.
Yeah, there we go. So that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you, Joe, for joining me. It was really, really good to chat all things Town and Spurs down. Really looking forward to tomorrow's game as well. And thank you all for listening. Whilst you're here, if you want to check out Daily Spurs and Daily Ipswich and all the socials, give us all like nice reviews on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get a podcast from. We'd really, really appreciate that. But that is going to do it. We hope you have a great weekend and also enjoy the game at Portman Road this Saturday. We'll see you next time.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.